And welcome back. We're seeing it everywhere. Of course, it's pollen. Everyone drives a yellow car right now.
That's right.
And of course, pollen is something that can cause severe allergies this time of the year.
But the question is, how long will the pollen last this year? And here to answer that is Dr. Todd Atkins with the Mississippi Asthma and Allergy Clinic. Dr. Atkins, a pleasure to have you with us. As I mentioned,
thank you for having me.
Our little break, Walt and I are on a special diet of these cough
drops.
Yes, cough drops. We share, we try different ones. What is a pollen count and how is it measured?
Well, right now, the predominant thing that most people are seeing out there is actually tree pollen. And actually, most of what you see is actually pine pollen. But there are other trees that are pollinating right now, and the grasses are going to start pollinating or are starting to pollinate now. It's a time of the year where we go from 0 to 60 in pollen very, very quickly, and a lot of people get very symptomatic this time of the year. So Mississippi is a place where there's lots of allergy.
Now, does the pollen count, does that necessarily correlate to if the pollen count is higher, does that mean your allergies are going to be worse that day?
Well, it certainly is true. Higher pollen counts are associated with worsened symptoms. That being said, around here, most of the time, during this time of the year, it's high. So you can just say pollen counts are really high. Frankly, from about this time of the year, really even through most of the summer and even into the fall, there really is fairly significant pollen. In Mississippi, really, we don't have but a few months out of the year where there's not a lot of pollen. But right now, the start of the spring and the early spring and summer, and then again in the fall are usually the worst times. This time of the year due to tree pollen and grass pollen, in the fall due to weed pollen.
Are some pollens more aggravating than others?
Well, probably the worst here in Mississippi probably actually is the grass pollen. Grass pollen is a very vigorous allergen. But it just depends on what any individual person's allergic to. You can be allergic to tree grass and weed pollen, and many people are allergic to all of them. But this is a particularly bad time of the year because pollen counts are so high. And again, we go from not having that much pollen to all of a sudden having a lot. And so that's why people get so symptomatic.
Dr. Atkins, of course, we're used to wearing masks now since COVID's been around for a couple of years. But if we're going outdoors, doing yard work, activities, something like that, is a mask, a pollen mask, is that going to help?
Yes, it can help. There's no doubt it can help. The thing is, this time of the year, really, when you think about treating allergies, really three basic things you can do. You can avoid the pollen, which frankly is fairly hard. But if you're cutting the grass or doing something where you might have a high exposure like that, yes, a mask might be useful. But frankly, on a day-to-day basis, it's not really always that practical to do that. Other things like nasal steroid sprays, over-the-counter nasal steroid sprays can be very effective. There's some really good antihistamines, but the key is to kind of use some of these medicines more on a routine basis to kind of help prevent the problems rather than waiting till you get very sick and then having to kind of pull yourself out of trouble. Certainly, we have some people that have trouble that is really severe every year. Another treatment option would be things like allergy shots.
Yeah.